over here doing.
We could just do that for one whole episode, couldn't we? Just dance in silence.
I think so. Yeah. Maybe one day we'll have a dance party.
I mean, people, anyone who's watching this, if you're down for a dance party,
Let us know.
and who knows, maybe at some point we might facilitate that dance party. Okay.
Maybe.
So we've just been talking about what we need to talk about today. Hair in my mouth.
Because we just decide on the fly. None of this is scripted.
Yeah,
We don't have a plan.
we have a list, but we just decided outside of that list, here's a new tangent. And I have suggested, and this is quite an interesting topic, about the pressure that we feel to be a certain way around certain people or show up in a certain way for certain people. When I talk about showing up, usually I'm talking about it in a business context, like how you show up online or how you show up to your audience or to your community, but actually
Or to your job,
to
for
your,
those who are not
yeah, that's what I mean. I
business.
was gonna say it transcends that. It's like how you show up, what mask are you putting on today? What personality are people getting from you today? Like, how many times do we walk out the house and have to be somebody that we feel that we should be versus who we actually are?
Ooh, juicy topic. Juicy
Well,
topic.
juicy topic for a 30-minute quickie.
If we ever edit episodes, it'll be because I've had to go pick up my kids from school because of our time difference, and then we have to come back and finish it. That'll be when you see edits, is because it's like, but this was so good, or we have to do two-parters or something. Yeah, and that is the crux of my work. So it's fun that you brought that up, because that is the crux of what I do with tarot, is getting people back to that authentic self. Because I feel like there's so much pressure on us today to be a certain way in society, to be a certain, we were supposed to want certain things, like certain things. That the I think when you hit school, the idea of the clique, the plastics, you have to be, dress, talk, show up a certain way, and that pressure sticks with us all the way into adulthood, by the way. It's not like, oh, once you're done school, it's done. You just, you move on to different, you may get more niche down when you go to post-secondary, but it's still, there's the cool kids and the in crowd, and like the pressure to fit in and to have friends and to be that person
Mhm.
is insane.
Yeah, it's weird because I never went through that like at school. I was in the UK, so we've got like infant school, primary school. Obviously, it's yeah slightly different in terms of how we
Mm.
talk about it. But like in certainly in primary school, which is what, from maybe 6 to 10 or 11 years old, I was like super duper smart. So I was like top of the class for everything, clever, clever, clever. Um, but also I was a total tomboy. So I was also like, I was a striker on the football team. I was like, so I was playing the sport. I mean, we're going back to the 90s now, right? God.
That's
Jesus,
okay. I can go back to the
honestly,
90s with you. I'm not that far behind.
honestly, it sounds like such a long time ago. And the 80s actually, sure. But back then it was like, okay, so the football team, say you got 11 people on the football team, two of whom are girls. So it was like, but there was never really any rivalry in terms of like, I'm a girl, you're a boy. It was just like, I'm good at what I do, so therefore I'm on the football team, kind of thing. But we
Yeah.
had, when I went into secondary school, which is after we do our 11 plus exam, which determines whether or not you go to like grammar school or you go to like normal school, like a mixed school, boys and girls. I went to an all girls grammar school because I was like clever. And then it became more cliquey in my mid-teens, but actually I never ever wanted to fit in with those people. I actively tried to I purposefully rebelled against them because I
Yeah.
fucking hated them. But I think I did that because I knew that I would be rejected by them. So then I just decided I would make it before they got a chance to insult me. I said I don't fucking want it anyway. Do you know what I mean? It's like you get there first. So that's what I always did. But I know, I mean, I don't know what it's
Very
like.
similar. very similar over here where it was, um, I was bullied because Kel Surprise, while I was the clever one, I was also the weird one. Are we
Okay.
surprised? No. I grew up as a nerd girl in I was like the theater nerd, but I was also video games. I was also into anime. I was in Dungeons and Dragons, fantasy, like, and now that stuff is cool. Like it's cool to like Lord of the Rings and
Oh,
Game
it's
of
cool
Thrones. Yeah,
to
it wasn't
nerd out
cool.
now. Mate, I
Yeah.
tell you
And it
what, I
did not when I was growing up wasn't cool. Not in the
no,
90s. It
you
was
know what's
not
cool now?
cool.
What's cool now that wasn't cool when I was at school, when I was too cool for school, was yeah the goth aesthetic. This is pre-emo, bearing in mind. I actually had one of my niece's friends convinced that I invented emo because that's how old I am in comparison to her. She even said to my niece, she was like, "Yeah, but your auntie invented emo, didn't she?" And my niece is like, "She sure did." So but I was like, I would, if you call me an emo, I'm insulted. I'm fucking goth, babes. Like, leave it. I'm purist. So, but then the whole goth aesthetic came in, and then the fucking witchy, you know, like witch talk and all that shit. And I'm like, you cunts, because I'll tell you what, I had the shit kicked out of me at school for that. Like, I was, right? And I stood by it. I never conformed. Um, in order to like fit in or not get bullied or whatever
Mhm.
for it. But yeah, I kind of now I'm just like fuck you to these people. But it's strange how these what's deemed cool or what's deemed whatever.
And the phases, yeah. The phases we go through because even when like I just did a live on my own Instagram about this about what I do and how I read tarot and I was like when I started like this wasn't as big as it was. Like I didn't tell anybody about it because people were like devil worshiper, you need to be
Yeah, I
burned
know.
at the stake and that's how it was. Like this is something and it took me even coming out like when I finally like was like cool, I'm going to have a spiritual business. It took a lot of courage for me, like, and a lot of shit I had to work through because all of that was in my head. Like, that's why I said when you're an adult, that shit still goes on. You have your work cliques and you have the cool gang at work and it's just
That's why
how do you show up? How do you show up as you when you have all of this on your plate? When you have the pressure to fit in or conform?
this is why I refer to it as stepping out of the broom closet. Because and listen, and I will say this, in the UK, I can't speak for every facet of the UK, but in my experience, the shit that you get for it is far less so than the shit you will get in like in Canada, in America. It's a different, I think, because there's a, you know, I mean, I think it's like 50% of the UK identifies secular, you know, like there's not, we don't really have that huge religious kind of overarching shit going on or anything like that. Like people will say like, oh, you're a witch. Oh, okay, cool. No one goes, ah! Apart from a Jehovah's Witness that I went to college with, who was like, you worship Satan. And I was like, I don't believe
I
in
haven't.
God. I don't believe in God. And she was like, but you worship the devil. And I was like, back the fuck up a minute. I don't believe in God. And she was like, so you worship the devil. And I was like, if I don't believe in God, then I don't believe in the devil, do I? Like it did my head in. But we don't have that. I feel it, well, I can only speak from my own experience. There was never any nastiness around it. That wasn't really it. It was like, you're weird, right? I am weird. Cool. Thank you. Thanks for
Yeah.
noticing. Um,
Yeah, I was the weird kid with the tarot cards
yes,
and
same. But I think I got shit for other reasons than you got shit for. Like obviously we've got
yeah.
our own experiences. So when you show up as who you are and as yourself, obviously I went through a period of abandonment of myself, probably from like maybe my mid to late 20s into maybe my early to mid 30s. I went through a period of
Yep.
abandonment of self where I was just, I just went into complete shutdown in terms of my connection to self, my spirituality, my connection to the universe. I went through this
Yep.
like, it was like a midlife crisis of, but spiritual
Yeah,
midlife
it's
crisis.
like yeah, it's that's when you it's almost like it's your own it's like almost like the I don't want to say reverse dark night of the soul because that dark night of the soul is you kind of coming to terms with abandoning yourself in that
Yes,
way. And then you go, oh shit. And you go through all this shit being like, how do I find myself in all of this? Oh my God. And then you
that
come
was
out the
when
other
I
side.
it was
And like for me,
sorry, go
it
on.
was similar. It was very similar. Like, because I started reading tarot when I was 16. I started getting into spiritual work that early. And then I got into college. And then it was like, again, to fit it in, you kind of had to tuck those parts of your self away. Um, my ex partner was very much like, that stuff isn't real. What are you doing? And so again, when I did practice when I was with him, it was when he wasn't home in secret on my own here and there. And when COVID hit, I had just become a mother for the second time. That my second born was born just before we went into lockdown, and I just remember waking up and looking in the mirror one day and being like, "Who the fuck am I?
Mhm. Yeah,
Who who
yeah.
the fuck am I?" Like, because I'd given myself away so much that I was like, there was none of me left to remember who I was.
You deferred, and that's exactly what I did during that sort of potentially a decade where I abandoned myself. I deferred because of ego
Mhm.
into something that I've always been told, which fucking annoys the hell out of me. If anyone ever says this, you're too clever to have beliefs like that, Louise. You're too smart to think that, Louise. You're too smart to do. And I'm like, intellectually, right? I don't very, I listen, I don't rival anyone. Intellectually, I'm like, I think my emotional intelligence is higher than it academically. I'm not book smart, but there are people that would say that I am. Right, that's fine. But it was like the what other people were saying, you ought to be cleverer than this in terms of my belief system, my spiritual belief system. So then I started to, yeah, question like, oh, actually, yeah, am I being balanced about this? Am I considering this from a rational standpoint? And it wasn't until I decided that I don't need to be fucking rational. I am allowed to believe what I want because you get to choose your beliefs. And so what helps me sleep at night, if it's got nothing to do with you, I ain't trying to convince you of anything. This is what I think, and which is also changeable, which is another part of yourself that you have to accept, is that you don't have to think one thing one day and then worry if it changes. It's like, no, it's an evolution. It ebbs and flows. Like you're
It
allowed
does,
to.
and like I'm in the middle of repairing that relationship with the word God, really, because I remember very clearly sitting at the kitchen table when I was a teenager and looking at my parents and being like, I don't believe in God the way you do. And they automatically took it as you don't believe in God. And the
Uh-huh.
fight that started, oh my God. And it's not that I didn't believe in spirit or higher power. I just didn't know if God was the term that I wanted to use.
You weren't being monotheistic in that. I had the same conversation with my dad, but it went like this. My dad went, I said, oh bloody rah rah rah, like, um, don't believe in God. And my dad went in front of loads of people, is where he went, you know God, like that. And he sort of laughed. And I went, you do. And that was the end of the conversation. And we just looked at each other. This is why we don't talk alone when we're drunk. We're not allowed. My mum has said, you two drunk. No, you're not bit, because we will fucking go at each other. But
Yeah.
it's just
I
it
was,
was
and they just went
fascinating.
off on me. Like my mom went off on me because I was like, and it wasn't that I didn't believe in spirit or divinity. I was just, my relationship to it was changing. And so I didn't know if God was the word that I wanted to use.
It didn't feel aligned for you to say the word
Yeah,
God. When, because obviously we all, in what I deliver, I always say, the universe, source, God, spirit, soul, higher self, higher being, whatever, like call it what you want. We're talking about the same fucking thing.
agreed,
Ultimately,
100%.
we're all talking about the same thing when we're talking about a higher consciousness. Now, the nuance of whether you believe there is a man in the sky sitting on a cloud dictating what's gone on and it's all predetermined, versus the connection to the ever expanding universe and that we're all matter and blah blah blah, and we go down a bit more of a science route, but then try and link it together in a spiritual sense. It don't really matter to me. It doesn't matter to me at all, in terms of like, listen, we all know that there's there's something greater than ourselves. And so then how we verbalize that, how we vocalize that is to me irrelevant. You like, I've read this book a few months ago. I read a book and the guy was saying God, 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 but I took God as self. I took God as higher self. So it didn't jar because that's how I decided to interpret it for myself. And I think these are
Yeah.
the conversations that need having, is you are allowed to have your own experience with that part of yourself and that part of your knowing, that doesn't necessarily conform to one way of thinking or another. And so when you show up and you talk about this stuff, you can either talk about it from like, well, this is what I think, but you sort of say it with such conviction that everyone else should believe it, or you allow people the space and the freedom to and acknowledge that we all have our own set of beliefs and our own belief system, and we're all encompassing and all embracing. Because realistically, what happens to you after you die, I don't really give a fuck. I mean, we'll meet again, don't know where, don't know when,
Oh
because we've met
yeah.
before. We've had
If
this
I
conversation.
die before you, Lou, I'm coming back and I'm haunting your ass. Like I'm showing up and
You
scaring
don't
the
need to. I'll have
shit
got
out of you. I will come back if I die before you. I'm coming back and like scaring the shit out of you. And just gonna be like, hey,
this is the thing. I believe that all souls, that we made decisions before we were incarnated in this 3D realm, and I believe that everything that has happened, that will happen, that is happening everywhere all at once. So I
mhm,
believe in the what I call the eternal now. Blah blah blah. Like trying to explain that to somebody, I don't. But equally, it doesn't matter if you think
no,
that or
no,
not. It doesn't. It really doesn't matter, especially in terms of when we, and I think this is where people get stuck, pulling it back around to what we're talking about how we're showing up.
yeah,
I think a lot of the time people worry about alienating other people when they're speaking from their heart and their truth and their soul, and they're saying like, this is how I
absolutely.
see things. When I tell you how I see things, it isn't because I want you to see them in the way that I do. I just want you to understand what my perspective is and what my perception is. um you don't, and I don't need to, look, listen, I'm not asking for feedback at this time. I don't need you to tell me if I'm right or wrong. Like
No,
ultimately at this point in time in my life, I don't give a fuck whether you agree with me or not. But beyond that, if our values are match, if our values, which are ultimately, we all get to be who we are whenever we fucking want, and we all get to believe what we want to believe, and there is connection outside of ourselves, and the biggest connection that we should really consider is our connection to ourselves, and then in turn each other. Then we align. So
yeah.
then
Well,
the rest of it irrelevant.
yeah, and I mean, there's a sense of coming to terms with that because we build these relationships on who we want people to believe we are.
Yeah.
And as soon as you can let that go, and I'm not saying that it's easy to let that go, but there are people who will like the genuine, authentic you, like letting go of that person that I was, who was the people pleaser, who was willing to sacrifice herself for others. And it's not to say that there isn't a term of sacrifice now, but I mean like continually giving away my power, continually serving others, continually abandoning myself for others. That's what I mean by sacrificing myself. Um then I had like the most beautiful relationships come in, and one that was there from the beginning and still is there because it's just like, yeah, this is, we went through it together and this is my ride or die and this is what happens. And so there is a sense of like scariness coming out and being like, this is who I actually am and who I want to be and who I want to grow into. Um, but there's so many people out there that are going to look at you and be like, you're finally here.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Hey, come on, go, get in here.
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
like that makes me, it sets my fucking soul on fire when I see somebody be who they are. That's my jam. Like that makes me
Yes.
happier than anything else. Like, tell me all your weird shit, be your weird fucking self, because I'm like, I'm here for it. I am here.
Yes.
I'm showing up for you showing up. That's what I want. for everyone.
Yeah. And how you get there is a lot of work. I'm not even, and I know you hate the word work, Lou, but I think in this case, because it is what it is, having to dig down like that and having to show up continuously, courageously from the heart space,
Mm.
it takes work to do that because it is like it's like it's like you come out a little bit and like you see if it's safe and then you're like, oh, something scared you and you go back down. But like next time you're like, okay, well, I
Yeah,
can handle
a
this
bit
much. So
further
maybe I can
up.
push it a little bit further. And then you go back and then you like, and so it's like this up and down and back and forth until you really are ready
Yeah.
to let go and be like, well, now I'm here.
Yeah. Yeah. Listen, and I just want to address the fact that, yes, I do hate the term work. Retrospectively, I can say, wow, I've done a lot of work. But if I want to do the work, I have to call it something else in order to embark upon it because I fucking hate the idea of work. So I'm like, ooh, exploration, excavation. Like and that's only because it's me. So, but then
Yeah.
again, that's me showing up in my authenticity saying, I have to reframe things to myself in order to do the thing that needs to be done to get to the place that I want to go. And in order to do that, you do need to do the fucking work. So I can
Yeah.
say, oh, I've done the work. I'm never going to do any work ever again. But after I've done the next section of, I can go, yeah, well, I did that work, but I'm never going to embark on work because fuck work. But ultimately it is, I just call it something different. So,
Yeah.
and that's only
I
for
call it
me to
I
trick
call it my
myself into
quest,
doing it.
right? Nerd girl over here calls it her quest.
Right, you can call it a quest. You see like something shiny over here and you're like, ooh, side quest, right? Whereas I would call it exploration, excavation of self, where sometimes it requires like fucking shovels, sometimes it requires a big drill, other times it requires a really really gentle brush to just excavate slowly, gently, and that's just my way. And again, going back to what we were talking about, if we're talking about God or we're talking about our spirituality, it's how we position things and frame things to ourselves in order for us to be able to then give ourselves permission to do the things, whatever they may be, for ourselves. You don't have to do it from anyone else's perspective. You can say to yourself, well, I like to think of it like this. You're allowed. Listen, let's talk God. God gave you an imagination for a reason. So for you to be able to create a scenario in your mind that then allows you and gives you permission to do the things that you know you need to do in your life and do it with love, you know, then frame that however you fucking well need to frame it, girl. I don't really give a fuck at this point. I'm not going to sit
Yeah.
and tell you why God is bullshit because it doesn't matter to me whether you believe in heaven and hell or whether you believe in fucking this. It literally, it doesn't have any impact on who you are. Um, you get to choose. You get
And I think the biggest thing you said there was permission, is that we constantly look for permission from others, from our friends, from our parents, from our social groups, to give us permission to be a certain way. And really, the only person that can give that permission is you.
I think I fucking agree. And the thing that really sort of set me off on this, fuck it, there's two ways of saying fuck it. One's, oh, fuck it. And the other's, fuck it. It's like, fuck it. Like in a
Yeah.
really exciting,
It's a
fucking
free, yeah, it's a
freeing
freeing fuck it.
liberal.
Because you're like, I don't care. I
Yeah.
don't care. I
So,
don't give no shits anymore.
right. So when I started to look at the people in my life that I admire, whether they are friends, family, somebody I can physically touch, or people that I admire from afar, they share something in common, and that is just that they are unapologetically who they are, and they just rock up and do their thing. And even if they're a bell end at points in time, even if they just own it, and I'm like, I love that shit. I live for that shit. And then the permission became like, well, if I adore people who have this capacity, and I know I have this capacity, the limitations that I put on myself are just perceived expectations from others. Oh, I shouldn't be like this. Well, fuck that noise. fuck it, I am just going to be like this, and they'll sort themselves out. If you want me, you want me.
Well, exactly. And here's the kicker, right? We're always looking for somebody else to give us permission, but by you showing up and giving yourself permission to say fuck it and be like, fuck it, I'm here, bitches. This is who I am. You're actually giving other people permission to do the same thing,
We're
right? So it's
giving
like this
them,
weird like connection cycle thing.
right? You what and I've talked to Shan about this a lot. It's you are giving them permission to give themselves permission.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, here's the permission slip for you to give yourself the fucking permission slip to go, oh, here I am, bitches.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Like I just went through a huge rebrand a few months ago and I was, I was like, oh, tarot healing coach. I look at myself peachy colors. And then I was like, this doesn't feel like me anymore. And so when I started meshing my tarot with my nerd girl and I came out as the dragon slayer, I was like, this is who I am. This
Still
is right.
taking
And
a
it's like,
little tiny weeny bit of credit for that as well. Like, I just have to say, because I'm a bit like,
yes, of course,
only a little bit, because I think like, I feel like it's yours. It's not mine. It's nothing to do with me in that respect. But I remember when you went over that, and then when we added in the ever evolving bit, and I'm just like,
yeah.
well,
And
this is you. This is you. When you say
yeah.
you're ever evolving dragon slayer, you're not just saying, hey, I slay dragons. You're saying, and I'm giving myself permission to be who I am and become whoever I'm gonna be. And in doing so, you are giving other people permission to give themselves permission to evolve and
Yeah.
be
And I found a
whoever
way
they need to be.
to mix spiritual woo woo with my nerd girl stuff, and that makes me like so like warm and fuzzy in here,
Yes.
right? But then I see other people doing the same thing, and now they're coming out and being like, I'm spiritual and I'm nerdy, and they're mixing their stuff together, and I'm like, yeah,
Right?
my
Because this
spiritual
is what
nerds.
happens when we start doing this stuff. It's suddenly, you know, obviously a lot of the time we will be having a direct influence on others. I had this conversation a few months ago with a client of mine as well, which is recognizing just how influential you are. Like, you're not, listen, we're not influencers, right? This isn't what it is. But how influential you are, that one sentence out of your mouth could land with somebody in such a way that it changes their entire fucking existence. That is being an influential person. And so for you to turn up and be who you are, and from a place of authenticity and being the beautiful fucking soul that you are, warts and all, let's say, that is, somebody at some point needs that.
Yeah,
That therein lies your influence. And so when you're doing this for yourself, you know, and I do firmly believe this, the more we do this stuff for ourselves, but it isn't self-serving, we are serving others by becoming it in front of others, so that they themselves can say, fuck yeah, this is all fucking yes, 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 please. And so to address those things and to create that, as you say, the meshing of the two. And I do the same thing, you know, like with the, you know, like I'll fucking bring all sorts of fucking rando shit to the table and then bury it beneath this other stuff, and like, you know, rah, 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 rah. And people pick up on it. People really pick
yeah,
up on it, and it's
yeah.
insane
And
sometimes.
it's amazing that since I've started being more of myself and letting that part of myself size, like that part of myself shine through and come out like that, more and more people have been coming into my world being like, I like the way you speak about tarot. Nobody speaks about tarot in that way because nobody can speak about it in my way because I'm me, right? But it's now they're looking at it being like, there's perspectives are shifting. They're starting to think about different things. And it's like, but at the same time, I'm still like, be like, by all means, take whatever you need from me to integrate it, but also like be whatever you throw at me is just as beautiful and amazing, right? Because your
I think
mind is,
that's a very good point. That's a very good point, is when others are in their kind of like, I'm over exaggerating here, but in their adoration, they forget that like they have a huge contribution. Like, I always see myself as a contributor. I'm a reporter. I'm a contributor. I'm not an instigator. I'm not coming up with anything brand new, other than here's something. Now I've run it through my Louise, and then it's coming out in a new way where I'm like, now fuck that noise, blah, blah, blah. Louise has got something to say about this. Or have we thought about it like this? Like that's the new, I'm offering a new or an alternative, let's call it an alternative perspective. But you know, and then people kind of go, wow, you and your insights. And I'm like, that's incredible. But what about you and your fucking insights? What about all
Yeah.
the shit that you bring to the table that you don't even recognize in yourself right now? Because every single client that I have, every single friend I have, every member of my family, like you're telling me that this is what you're getting from me, but what, like, can I now tell you what I get from you? Because you are forgetting all the time that you are providing as well as receiving. You are providing, you're nourishing other people left, right, and center.
And I think that is because I do have to run now. That's a beautiful note to end it on, that you nourish other people.
Yes, nourishing.
So, you know what? You have something crazy that's written on your heart that's authentically you to share, a piece of knowledge, whether it is anything to do with writing, whether it's tarot, whether it's spirituality, whether it's your opinion on divinity, on spirit, on God, whatever, toss it in the comments
Please.
because please, because we will be nourished and you'll be nourishing this community. And then what comes back is going to nourish you as well.
Absolutely. And we're always open for dialogue at all
Yeah.
times. All right, then you fuck off then, Heidi. And then perhaps when you come back, if you are free, we might do a second one. Maybe. All right, I'll stop the recording. All right, thank you everyone for watching.
Like, comment, share,
Love.
subscribe.
All that malarkey. Right, I'm stopping. Mwah.